Well, from the Skyview Motorsports desk and from the Cup Garage, this is Roy J. Akers. With me, Steve Sweitzer of the Lasco Press and Tyler Head, Communications Director of Echo Park Speedway. And so, taking a look at the Pocono show, I'm going to turn it right over to Steve. You were at Pocono, first trip ever. What were your observations of the race and of the track?
Well, it was it was great racing. A lot of interesting storylines there this weekend. Um, the track, I mean, everything about it, first class facility. Really enjoyed the people there, and about the only complaint was had some rain on Sunday morning, but
Yeah.
we got it done.
And as far as the racing itself, did it live up to what was said that it was kind of a veterans racetrack? Because there were some young drivers that were certainly up there up front, like Carson Hocevar again, and a few other guys, Ty Gibbs early on. So it looked like everybody had a good run at one time or another.
Yeah, the track is really, um, I mean, if you have a clean air out front, that's a huge advantage at that track. And I think it goes back to handling. It's a strange setup with three different corners. Three different amounts of banking, and so the comments that Ryan Blaney made in the um, media center prior to the race, I thought were kind of interesting. He said when he comes there that he tries to get his vehicle set for two corners. He'd prefer to be good in one and three, and just survive in corner two. And it is, I think, very difficult for the teams to get a perfectly balanced race car across all three of those different corners.
Tyler, what did you think of Pocono?
Well, one, I mean, I didn't have the pleasure of being there for what I heard was a very electric atmosphere, and that seemed to come through on the broadcast of the race that Amazon Prime carried, and the CW and FS1 on the other races of the weekend too, between the Craftsman Truck Series and the Xfinity Series. A lot of people there for all 3 days, sold out infield, and you could see it from afar, and I'm sure it was even more being there in person, like Steve was, but. Definitely an interesting race. Chase Briscoe getting the win and getting the monkey off his back with Joe Gibbs Racing. Now it'll be interesting to see how that carries forward for him. Does that kind of loosen him up to, really start to flex his muscle with that new team now that they have that first win notched in the record books?
Mhm.
And also just a race of coulda, woulda, shouldas, right? I think about Brad Keselowski had control of the race, had that miscue coming into pit road when it was closed, and then their outside chance of working their way back into the race upended when caution came out before they had a chance to come back on the pit road later in the race. You know, execution is the key to winning at Pocono for sure.
Yeah.
Hey,
Reading
Roy, you mentioned Carson Hocevar. Just let the fans know there's some interesting stuff going on during Friday late afternoon Craftsman Series truck race. Hocevar ran in that race, and he ran extremely well. He was up front most of the afternoon, and they had a late caution. And he lined up behind Corey Heim, who probably had the best car. And as they were getting ready to come to green, Heim developed a flat tire, had to pull out a line, and so Carson Hocevar moved up and took Corey's spot. Now, what is supposed to happen there, according to NASCAR, is that Heim was the control car, and when he dropped down, then the control car switches to the inside. I'm not so sure that and I can't remember who was on the inside at that time.
Riggs.
But yeah, Riggs. I don't know whether or not Riggs knew that or not, and he was very slow to take off at the when they came to the um, starting line, and Hocevar gunned it. Okay, so there was a little bit of controversy. NASCAR met and decided that he had jumped the restart. And so he had to drive through the pits at pit road speed, which of course, took him out of contention for the win. But I did ask him Saturday morning if his crew got an opportunity to, you know, plead on his behalf, the circumstances, and he gave a very short, curt no. So I don't know what you read into that. Maybe he's been a bad boy here for a few races, and maybe NASCAR was teaching a little lesson there in those
All right.
circumstances.
So taking a look at this race that we had at Pocono, there were 11 lead changes among 7 drivers. Chase Briscoe led a race high 72 laps in this race. A couple things I found interesting, gentlemen, is that amongst the leaders, Denny Hamlin and others, they were saying it was impossible to pass if you didn't have clean air. It was really, really hard. But then in the back of the field, Brad Keselowski 3 different times drove through the field, almost made it all the way back up when he finished, was it 8th or 9th? And Ryan Blaney did it twice. So in the back of the field, you could move up, but in the front of the field, it looked like it was tough pickings for everybody. Any comments on that?
Well, just you
go ahead, Tyler. Go ahead, Tyler.
I was just going to say, I think that kind of goes back to what Ryan Blaney was talking about. That Steve was saying, that he really focuses on turn 1 and turn 3, and to me, that stands out as a viewer as the 2 corners where there's a little bit of options with the lanes to try to find some clean air, which we know is so important with these cars that run in the NASCAR Cup Series. But the tunnel turn, your options are very limited, and you're almost certainly going to run nose to tail through there. And if you're the trailing car, you're going to be at an aerodynamic disadvantage and then try to rally through turn 3 and turn 1 to try to complete a pass. And the closer you get up to the front, the greater that challenge becomes for sure, which is why execution is such a key thing to be able to win one of these races at Pocono.
And with that,
those comments were right on. That's it is difficult to pass, especially out front. The clean air is a huge advantage for the lead car.
And with that, we have Joe Gibbs. He was talking about how happy he was that he hired Chase Briscoe. He was on the market. He was in demand. Coach, what were some of the paces that you and your crew went through, your team? Was there a lot of research done? What happened there in order to get Chase Briscoe as a Joe Gibbs race?
Yeah, I think, to be truthful, super speed. I mean, you're talking about 5 poles and 5 top 5s before today. And so they've been knocking at it. And normally when you do that in pro sports, you get the victory. But I just think for our whole team back there, when we make a decision for a driver, it's just a huge deal for us. We went through a lot. Tried to research every single thing that we could. And James and our crew chiefs are a part of it. And I think we came down to Chase was the guy, and he was being pursued by other people, so we went after him hard.
Fellas, Joe Gibbs, obviously very happy. He said he did a lot of research, and he was happy with what he saw. Him and his entire team were part of that project. I think he probably got the very best driver that he could out of Stewart-Haas Racing.
Well, the kid's fast. The car's been fast. 5 poles, I think, already this year.
Yeah.
It was just a matter of time before he put it all together and got to the winner's circle.
Tyler?
Yeah, I think that's, I mentioned earlier a bit of a monkey off his back because graduating from the former, Stewart-Haas Racing to now Joe Gibbs Racing, you go from a team that was on its way out into reorganization into a one-car team to one of the top dogs in the sport, one of the organizations that expects to win and compete for championships. And so getting that first win and being able to relieve some of that pressure of, okay, we've done that, now let's build the rest of our season. I think that's an element for not only Chase Briscoe, but also for James Small, who himself has, worked with a champion driver in Martin Truex Jr., but has had a couple races, especially in that last year where they didn't pick up a win, that you could look at the top of the box and say, well, if a different decision got made there, maybe they have a different outcome. So I think that's going to be a big confidence boost for each of them, and maybe something that allows them to focus a little bit more forward on these races that are coming up and maybe string a few more wins together.
And I thought some real suspense that happened late in the race was the whole fuel mileage part. I did go over some of the highlight package to prepare for what we're doing here to make sure, everything got copacetic, so to speak. And Kyle Petty and Dale Earnhardt Jr. and the whole crew, Steve Letarte, they were talking about fuel mileage, and they said Briscoe had the most, but he didn't have enough. They didn't know if he had enough gas to finish. And to me, that was a real drumbeat moment on whether or not he was going to lose the lead. And Chase Briscoe, how worried were you that you were going to lose fuel? Can you take us through what happened there?
Yeah, I think some of that is probably why I've not savored the moment as much, is because I truthfully did not think I was going to win. Like, I'm still kind of in shock, truthfully. Like, it's not hit me just because I've fully expected to run out of fuel. Like, I didn't know our fuel situation. I knew that we were probably going to be short, but I knew inside the car I couldn't save any more fuel, but I still figured, when the 2 to go came, like I've watched races here long enough to see where the leader just runs out of fuel, right? And I'm like, I'm going to be the next guy that runs out. So I was waiting for it. I mean, we took the white flag, and I was waiting for it to stumble off of 2 or off of 1. And I was waiting for it to stumble off of 2. And then even into 3, I kind of lifted early, trying to still save fuel. But I was like, man, what if I don't run hard here? And then if I do run out and they beat me to the line or whatever. So it was just a weird mix of emotions because I've never really been in that situation before. So yeah, I'm definitely surprised that, honestly, we made it on fuel. I guess we maybe learned something because we've kind of talked about that all year long, that we feel like we're probably taking too much fuel in a lot of these races. And for us to be able to stretch it like we did, hopefully we can learn something from that.
Gentlemen, Chase Briscoe was indeed, he said if anybody else amongst the lead cars was going to drop out of the race, he figured as though their team was next, but that didn't happen, and everything was okay, but it was drama. Did you guys find yourselves rooting for Briscoe to get that monkey off his back this year?
Well, there was a lot going on late in that race. Briscoe's comment, he was very open in the press conference after the race, and some of his comments were really, I found interesting. He said that when he was sitting there on pit road, he had the engine revved up so high to make sure that he didn't stall it, that he didn't hear the command to wait. And so, it was really his mistake in leaving the pits a little bit early. And so it fell on his back to make sure that he saved enough gas to get him to the checkered flag. The other thing that was interesting there, he talked about, it seemed like that he was running faster laps by backing out of the gas before he got to the corners. And that is something that he said his crew has been on him about all year long. And he just didn't believe it. Young kid, man, I'm going to run that thing as deep as I can in the corner, and I'm going to make the best time that I possibly can. But he said he really learned that backing off on corner entry did allow him to have greater speed for the totality of the lap, not just in that particular corner that he was trying to push hard in. So another thing that came out in his comments, as I said, he was very open. He talked about the different atmosphere that there was between Joe Gibbs Racing and Stewart-Haas Racing, and how much more was expected out of him at Joe Gibbs Racing than there was at Stewart-Haas. And I found those comments very interesting. I mean, it was an eye-opening experience for him to come to Joe Gibbs Racing and to have to step into the level of expectation that team has and what was expected out of him. So you're right, Roy. I think it took a lot of heat off him to get that win and to get the monkey off his back.
Tell you what, I'm going to call an audible. Why don't we end the episode here so that we can spend our second episode this week with Tyler Head talking everything about the Quaker State 400 at Echo Park Speedway. Does that sound like a plan? Sounds like a plan. And so with that, we're going to be right back. We're going to have our second episode that's coming up in a moment as you are visiting the Cup Garage.